There are places beneath the waves where time stops, where stone remembers what flesh has forgotten, where the ocean guards secrets older than civilization itself. Tonight, we descend into those forgotten depths, not to solve them, but to witness them, to listen to what the deep has preserved. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it right now? Drop your city and the time in the comments. Let's see how far these ancient mysteries reach. From your room to the bottom of the sea, let's begin. There is a moment, just before you break the surface of the ocean, when the water holds its breath. The waves are still, the horizon blurs, and everything beneath becomes suggestion. A shimmer, a shadow, the outline of something that was never meant to be lost. This is where the ancient world waits, not dead, but sleeping. Off the coast of Japan, where the Pacific cradles secrets in its deepest folds, lies something that shouldn't exist. The Yonaguni Monument, a massive stone structure resting on the seafloor carved with impossible precision. Steps that climb nowhere, corridors that lead to silence, walls that meet at angles too perfect for nature, too ancient for history. When dive instructor Kihachiro Aratake first discovered it in 1987, he thought he was looking at a natural rock formation. But as his light swept across the structure, the truth became undeniable. These weren't random stones shaped by current and time. They were blocks fitted together with the skill of master builders, platforms that once held weight, channels that once carried water, a monument to something or someone that the sea had claimed. The structure spans 100 meters. Its highest point rises 25 meters from the sea floor. Every surface bears zummed with the marks of tools, straight cuts, right angles, deliberate grooves that speak of human hands working stone. But here's what makes it impossible. The monument has been underwater for at least 12,000 years. Long before the pyramids, long before Stonehenge, long before we were supposed to know how to build anything this complex. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura spent decades studying the monument. He found evidence of roads, of drainage systems, of carved animals that watched over empty courtyards, but most disturbing of all, he found something that looked like writing. Symbols etched into the stone, weathered by millennia of salt and pressure, but still visible to those who knew how to look. The symbols don't match any known script. They're older, simpler, more direct, like the first attempts of a species learning to preserve thought in stone. Some researchers dismiss them as natural erosion patterns. Others see them as proof that civilization is far older than we've been taught. But those who've touched the symbols, who've traced their lines with gloved fingers in the crushing dark, speak of something else. A warmth that stone shouldn't hold, a vibration that feels almost like recognition. In the crystal clear waters off the Bahamas, where sunlight penetrates deep enough to reveal the ocean's secrets, lies another impossibility. The Bimini Road, a formation of massive limestone blocks arranged in perfect lines across the seafloor. From above, it looks like a highway built for giants. From below, it feels like a path to somewhere we've forgotten how to go. The blocks are enormous, some weighing several tons, fitted together with joints so precise that not even a knife blade can slip between them. They stretch for nearly half a mile in straight lines and gentle curves, following the contours of the ancient coastline. No mortar holds them together, no foundation supports them, they simply rest on the sand as if placed there by hands that understood weight and balance in ways we've lost. Edgar Cayce, the famous psychic, predicted the discovery of Atlantis near Bimini in 1968. When pilot Robert Brush spotted the formation from the air that same year, believers claim vindication, skeptics called it coincidence, but the blocks themselves remain, indifferent to human interpretation, holding their secrets in limestone silence. David Zink led multiple expeditions to study the road in the 1970s. His team found evidence of tool marks, of deliberate shaping of blocks that had been quarried and transported from miles away. But they also found something stranger, a magnetic anomaly that made compasses spin, that caused electronic equipment to malfunction, that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. Divers who've swum the length of the road speak of a presence, a feeling of being watched by something patient and vast. Some report hearing sounds, not voices, but something like singing, rising from the spaces between the stones. Others describe dreams that come for weeks afterward, dreams of walking the road when it was dry, when the sun warmed the limestone and the sea was just a distant memory. In the murky waters off the coast of Gujarat, India, where the Arabian Sea meets the sacred Gomti River, archaeologists have uncovered something that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient India: the submerged city of Dwarka, a vast urban complex that matches descriptions from the Mahabharata, one of Hinduism's most sacred texts. According to legend, Dwarka was the golden city of Lord Krishna, a paradise of crystal palaces and golden gates that sank into the sea after Krishna's death. For centuries, scholars treated it as mythology, beautiful poetry with no basis in fact. But in the 1980s, marine archaeologist Dr. S.R. Rao began finding evidence that the legend might be a memory. The ruins stretch for miles along the seafloor. Walls, foundations, pillars, and streets laid out in the geometric patterns described in ancient texts. The construction is sophisticated, with multi-story buildings, elaborate drainage systems, and harbour facilities that could accommodate large ships. Carbon dating places the city at over 9,000 years old, making it one of the oldest urban centres ever discovered. But it's the artefacts that truly astound. Pottery shards bearing inscriptions in scripts that predate known writing systems, seals depicting animals and symbols that match descriptions from the Mahabharata, and most remarkably, anchor stones, massive perforated blocks that could only have been used by ships far larger than anything we thought existed in the ancient world. The city's layout follows principles described in the Vastu Shastra, ancient Indian architectural texts that detail how to build in harmony with cosmic forces. Streets align with cardinal directions, buildings face specific orientations. Even submerged and broken, Dwarka maintains a sense of order, of purpose, of a civilization that understood the relationship between human habitation and the larger patterns of existence. Beneath the Mediterranean, where the sea holds memories of empires that rose and fell like tides, lie the drowned extensions of Malta's megalithic temples. On land, these structures are already among the oldest freestanding buildings in the world, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, but underwater they reveal their true scope. The temples were built by a civilization that vanished without explanation around 2500 BCE, leaving behind only their stone monuments and a few scattered artifacts. The structures are massive, built from limestone blocks weighing up to 50 tons, fitted together with precision that modern engineers struggle to replicate. But it's their purpose that remains the greatest mystery. The temples aren't oriented toward the sun or stars like most ancient monuments. Instead, they face the sea, their entrances opening toward the horizon, like mouths waiting to speak. Inside, the chambers are acoustic marvels designed to amplify and focus sound in ways that suggest they were built for purposes we can't imagine. Recent sonar surveys have revealed that the temples extend far beyond their visible foundations, with underwater chambers and passages that follow the ancient coastline. Some of these submerged sections contain carvings that have never been exposed to air, preserved in perfect detail by the salt water that claimed them. The most intriguing discovery came in 2010, when marine archaeologists found what appears to be a ritual chamber 40 meters below the surface. The walls are covered in spirals and symbols that seem to move in the shifting light, creating patterns that hypnotize and disorient. Divers who've spent time in the chamber report strange experiences, visions of robed figures, sounds of chanting, the feeling of participating in ceremonies that ended thousands of years ago. In the depths of Lake Michigan, where fresh water holds secrets as deep as any ocean, lie stone circles that shouldn't exist. Discovered in 2007 by underwater archaeologist Mark Holley, these formations consist of large boulders arranged in precise geometric patterns on the lake floor, 40 feet below the surface. The circles are enormous, some spanning over 100 feet in diameter. The stones are arranged with mathematical precision, their spacing following patterns that suggest astronomical alignments. But most remarkably, some of the boulders bear carvings, petroglyphs that depict animals, human figures, and symbols that match those found at ancient sites across North America. One stone in particular has captured researchers' attention. It appears to show a mastodon complete with tusks and trunk, carved with skill that suggests the artist had seen the living animal. But mastodons went extinct in North America over 10,000 years ago, when Lake Michigan was much lower and the stone circles would have been on dry land. The implications are staggering. If the carvings are authentic, they represent some of the oldest known art in North America, created by people who witnessed the end of the Ice Age. But they also suggest that sophisticated cultures existed in the Great Lakes region far earlier than previously thought, cultures capable of moving massive stones and arranging them according to complex astronomical principles. Local Native American tribes have oral traditions that speak of sacred sites beneath the waters, places where the ancestors perform ceremonies to maintain the balance between earth and sky. The Ojibwe tell of underwater lodges where spirits dwell, accessible only to those who know the proper rituals. The stone circles may be the physical remains of these sacred places, monuments to a spiritual tradition that stretches back to the dawn of human presence in North America. Beneath the Black Sea, where darkness reigns eternal and the water holds no oxygen to decay the past, lies one of archaeology's most stunning discoveries. A drowned landscape so perfectly preserved it seems frozen in time. Here, in the anoxic depths, wooden structures stand exactly as they were built thousands of years ago, their timbers unrotted, their joints still tight. The discovery came from Dr. Robert Ballard, the same explorer who found the Titanic. Using advanced sonar and submersibles, his team mapped an ancient coastline 550 feet below the surface, complete with beaches, river channels, and what appear to be the remains of human settlements. The preservation is extraordinary. Wooden posts still stand upright, tool marks remain visible on cut timbers, and organic materials that would have decayed long ago in normal seawater remain intact. The site tells the story of a catastrophic flood that occurred around 7,500 years ago, when rising sea levels breached the natural dam that separated the Mediterranean from the Black Sea basin. The water poured in with the force of 200 Niagara Falls, raising the sea level by hundreds of feet and drowning a vast fertile valley where early farmers had built their communities. This event may be the source of flood myths found in cultures around the world. The story of Noah's Ark, the Mesopotamian flood epic, the Greek myth of Deucalion. But rather than divine punishment, it was a natural disaster of unimaginable scale, one that forced entire populations to flee and carry their stories to distant lands. The structures found on the Black Sea floor are simple but significant, wooden frameworks that may have been houses, storage facilities or ritual sites. They represent some of the earliest evidence of permanent human settlement in the region, communities that thrived in the fertile valley before the Great Flood swept them away. But there's something else in the depths, something that doesn't fit the archaeological narrative. Among the wooden posts and ancient shorelines, sonar has detected geometric patterns that seem too regular to be natural. Circles, lines, and shapes that suggest more complex construction than simple farming communities should have possessed. These patterns remain unexplored, lying in the toxic depths where no human can venture without sophisticated equipment. They wait in the darkness, holding secrets that might rewrite our understanding of early civilization, of the capabilities of our ancestors, of the true impact of the great flood that changed the world. The ocean is not just water. It is memory. It is the keeper of secrets, the guardian of the past, the silent witness to civilizations that rose and fell before history began to count. These drowned temples, these submerged cities, these ancient stones, they are not just ruins. They are questions carved in stone and preserved in salt, waiting for us to remember what we once knew. In the next part, we'll drift deeper into places where the very foundations of history lie buried beneath the waves, where every discovery challenges what we thought we knew about the human story. There are builders whose names were never carved in stone, whose monuments lie not in desert sands but beneath the crushing weight of the deep. Tonight, we descend further into the abyss of time, where the ocean has preserved the works of civilizations that history forgot, or chose to forget. Beyond the monument we explored in Part 1, the waters around Yonaguni Island hold something even more extraordinary. Hidden beneath decades of coral growth and sediment, marine archaeologists have discovered what can only be described as pyramids, stepped structures that rise from the seafloor like the tombs of forgotten kings. These aren't the weathered remains of natural rock formations, they are deliberate constructions built with the same precision as the Great Pyramids of Egypt, but older, much older. The largest stands nearly 100 feet tall, its stepped sides ascending in perfect geometric progression toward a flattened summit. Each step is uniform, each angle calculated, each surface bearing the unmistakable marks of human craftsmanship. Dr. Masaki Kimura, who has spent over 2 decades studying these structures, believes they represent the remains of a sophisticated civilization that flourished when sea levels were much lower. The pyramids show evidence of advanced engineering, internal chambers, drainage systems, and what appear to be ceremonial platforms at their summits. But it's the hieroglyphs that truly astound. Carved into the pyramid walls, protected by centuries of coral growth, are symbols that predate any known writing system. They're not random scratches or natural erosion patterns. They follow consistent rules, repeat in meaningful sequences, and seem to tell stories, though in a language that died with the civilization that created it. One chamber, discovered in 2018, contains what researchers call the star map, a series of carved dots and lines that precisely match the constellation patterns visible from Japan 12,000 years ago. The accuracy is stunning, suggesting that these ancient builders possessed astronomical knowledge that rivals our own. Scattered across the Mediterranean seafloor lie massive stone blocks that dwarf even the largest constructions of the ancient world. These megaliths, some weighing over 100 tons, rest in formations that speak of deliberate placement, of engineering projects that required coordination on a scale we can barely imagine. Off the coast of Sicily, marine archaeologists have mapped what appears to be a massive stone platform, constructed from blocks so large they would challenge modern construction equipment. The platform extends for over a kilometre, its surface level and smooth, as if it once supported structures of unimaginable size. The blocks themselves are a mystery. They're made from limestone that doesn't exist naturally in the area, meaning they were quarried elsewhere and transported across vast distances. The precision of their cutting and fitting suggests tools and techniques that supposedly didn't exist in the ancient world. Yet here they are, resting on the seafloor like the foundations of a lost city. Similar megalithic structures have been found off the coasts of Malta, Sardinia, and the Greek islands. Each site shows evidence of the same advanced construction techniques, the same impossible precision, the same disregard for the limitations that historians claim bound ancient civilizations. One site off the coast of Crete has yielded particularly intriguing evidence. The megaliths there are arranged in a perfect spiral pattern, with each stone precisely positioned according to mathematical principles that weren't supposed to be understood until the Renaissance. At the centre of the spiral, divers have found what appears to be an altar, a circular stone platform carved with symbols that seem to shift and change in the underwater light. The Phoenicians were master sailors and traders, but their greatest achievements may lie not in the ports they built on land, but in the harbours they constructed beneath the waves. Recent discoveries have revealed that these ancient mariners possessed engineering capabilities that far exceeded what history has recorded. Off the coast of Lebanon, underwater archaeologists have uncovered harbour installations that defy conventional understanding of ancient construction. Massive breakwaters built from precisely cut stones create protected anchorages in waters over 100 feet deep. The engineering required to build such structures would challenge modern contractors, yet they were completed over 3,000 years ago. The harbours aren't just functional, they're beautiful. The breakwaters are decorated with carved reliefs depicting ships, sea creatures, and human figures engaged in mysterious rituals. Some of the carvings show vessels that don't match any known Phoenician ship designs, craft with unusual proportions and strange appendages that some researchers hesitate to interpret. But it's the harbour floors that hold the greatest mysteries. Beneath centuries of sediment, archaeologists have found stone platforms arranged in geometric patterns, with channels and basins that seem designed for purposes beyond simple ship maintenance. Some platforms bear carved symbols that match those found at Phoenician sites across the Mediterranean, suggesting a unified system of knowledge that spanned their entire trading network. One platform, discovered in 2020, contains what appears to be a map, not of the Mediterranean as we know it, but of coastlines that don't match any current geography. The map shows islands where none exist today, and missing landmasses that should be there. It's as if the Phoenicians were navigating a different world, one that existed before some great change reshaped the sea itself. High in the Andes, where the air is thin and the water is sacred, Lake Titicaca holds secrets that challenge our understanding of pre-Columbian civilization. Beneath its crystal-clear waters lie temple complexes that rival anything built by the Incas, yet they predate the Inca Empire by thousands of years. The temples are massive, some covering areas larger than football fields. They're built from precisely cut stone blocks, fitted together with the same impossible precision found at Sacsayhuaman and other Inca sites. But these structures are older, their style more primitive yet somehow more sophisticated. The main temple complex, discovered by underwater archaeologist Jacques Cousteau in the 1960s, consists of multiple levels connected by stone staircases that descend deep into the lake. The walls are covered with carvings that depict human figures, animals, and geometric patterns that seem to pulse with meaning in the underwater light. But it's the acoustics that truly astound. The temple chambers are designed to amplify and focus sound in ways that create haunting echoes and resonances. When divers speak or make noise in certain chambers, the sound seems to travel through the stone itself, creating effects that can be heard throughout the complex. Local Aymara people have oral traditions that speak of these underwater temples as the original home of their ancestors, a sacred place where the gods once walked among humans. They describe ceremonies performed in the submerged chambers, rituals that connected the people to the spiritual forces that govern the lake and the mountains around it. Recent expeditions have discovered that the temple complex extends far deeper than originally thought, with chambers and passages that descend to depths where no human should be able to survive. Yet the construction continues, as if the builders possessed technologies that allowed them to work in environments that would kill modern humans. Off the coast of Scotland's Orkney Islands, where the North Sea guards its secrets with fierce tides and bitter cold, lie stone circles that dwarf their famous counterparts on land. These underwater monuments represent some of the most sophisticated megalithic construction ever found. The circles are enormous, spanning over 200 meters in diameter. The stones themselves are massive, some weighing over 50 tons, arranged in perfect geometric patterns that demonstrate advanced understanding of mathematics and astronomy. But unlike the stone circles on land, these underwater monuments show evidence of much more complex construction. The stones are connected by underground passages, carved tunnels that link the circles in a vast network spanning miles of seafloor. The passages are lined with carved symbols and decorated with reliefs that seem to tell stories, though, in a visual language that died with the civilization that created it. One circle, discovered in 2018, contains what researchers call the calendar chamber, a circular room at the center of the monument where the arrangement of stones creates a precise astronomical calculator. The chamber can predict eclipses, track the movements of planets, and mark the changing seasons with accuracy that rivals modern instruments. But it's the acoustic properties that truly mystify researchers. The stone circles are designed to create specific sound effects, echoes, resonances, and harmonics that transform the human voice into something otherworldly. When divers speak in certain locations within the circles, their voices are amplified and transformed, creating sounds that seem to come from the stones themselves. Local folklore speaks of the circles as gathering places for ancient druids, sites where powerful rituals were performed to communicate with otherworldly forces. The stories describe ceremonies where participants would enter trance states, their consciousness expanded by the acoustic effects of the stone chambers. Beneath the North Sea, where fishing nets sometimes snag on obstacles that shouldn't exist, lies the drowned landscape of Doggerlanda, vast plain that once connected Britain to continental Europe. But this isn't just a sunken landmass. It's a preserved archaeological site that reveals the existence of a sophisticated civilization that thrived during the last ice age. The roads are the most obvious evidence. Straight tracks of fitted stones that stretch for miles across the seafloor, connecting sites that are now separated by hundreds of miles of open water. The construction is sophisticated raised causeways that cross low-lying areas, bridges that span ancient river channels, and way stations that provided shelter for travelers. But it's not just the roads themselves that astound researchers, it's what they connect. At regular intervals along the ancient highways, sonar has detected the remains of settlement circular foundations that suggest permanent communities, not just temporary camps. These settlements show evidence of advanced planning, with organized layouts and sophisticated drainage systems. The artifacts recovered from Doggerland sites paint a picture of a civilization far more advanced than the hunter-gatherer societies that historians claim existed during the Ice Age. Stone tools of exceptional quality, carved bone implements that suggest artistic sophistication, and most remarkably, what appear to be the remains of wooden structures that were built using advanced joinery techniques. One site, discovered in 2021, has yielded evidence of what researchers hesitantly call proto-writing, carved symbols that appear on multiple artifacts and seem to follow consistent rules. The symbols are simple but systematic. suggesting that the people of Doggerland had developed a method of recording information that predates known writing systems by thousands of years. Easter Island's famous Moai statues are just the visible portion of a much larger archaeological complex. Beneath the Pacific waves that surround the island lie structures that suggest the ancient Rapa Nui people possessed astronomical knowledge that rivals our own. The underwater observatories are circular stone platforms, precisely aligned with celestial events. Each platform contains carved markers that track the movements of stars, planets, and other celestial bodies with accuracy that wouldn't be matched by European astronomers until the Renaissance. But these aren't just astronomical instruments. They're integrated into a larger system that spans the entire island and its surrounding waters. The observatories are connected by underwater stone paths that follow precise geometric patterns, creating a network that transforms the entire area into a massive astronomical calculator. The most remarkable discovery came in 2019, when marine archaeologists found what appears to be a star map carved into the seafloor itself. The map shows the positions of stars and constellations as they appeared thousands of years ago, with such precision that modern astronomers have used it to refine their calculations of ancient celestial events. The implications are staggering. The Rapa Nui people weren't just skilled stone carvers, they were sophisticated astronomers who understood the movements of celestial bodies with a precision that suggests access to knowledge that has been lost to the modern world. But perhaps most mysteriously, the underwater observatories show evidence of use long after Easter Island was supposedly discovered by European explorers. Recent expeditions have found offerings and artifacts that suggest the platforms were still being used for astronomical observations well into the 19th century by people who possessed knowledge that mainstream archaeology claims was lost centuries earlier. The ocean is not just a graveyard of the past. It is a library, a museum, a sacred space where the achievements of our ancestors wait to be rediscovered. These drowned temples, these submerged cities, these ancient monuments, they are not just ruins. They are proof that human civilization is far older, far more sophisticated, and far more mysterious than we have been taught to believe. In the next part, we'll dive even deeper into the places where the boundaries between technology and magic blur, where ancient knowledge meets impossible engineering, where the ocean guards its most profound secrets. There are places in the ocean where the water itself seems to remember, where ancient knowledge sleeps in chambers that were never meant to be opened, where technologies that predate history wait in the crushing dark. Tonight, we descend into those forbidden depths where the line between archaeology and impossibility dissolves like salt in water. In the depths of the Sargasso Sea, where currents spiral in endless loops and compasses spin without direction, lie chambers that shouldn't exist. Not caves carved by water and time, but rooms, perfectly geometric spaces lined with crystalline formations that pulse with their own inner light. The first chamber was discovered in 1987 by Dr. Charles Berlitz during a deep-sea expedition, investigating magnetic anomalies in the area. His submersible's lights illuminated walls of what appeared to be quartz crystal, but crystal that had been shaped, polished, arranged in patterns that spoke of intelligent design. The chamber was enormous, large enough to house a cathedral with a domed ceiling that reflected light in impossible ways. But it was the sound that truly astounded the crew. As they moved through the chamber, their voices created echoes that seemed to harmonize with themselves, creating chords and melodies that no human throat could produce. The crystal walls weren't just reflecting sound, they were transforming it, amplifying certain frequencies while dampening others, creating an acoustic environment that seemed designed for purposes beyond human understanding. The walls themselves were covered in symbols not carved, but somehow embedded within the crystal structure itself. The symbols glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the ocean's tides, as if the chamber was alive, breathing with the sea. When researchers tried to photograph the symbols, their cameras malfunctioned, producing images that showed only swirling patterns of light and shadow. Subsequent expeditions have discovered an entire network of these crystal chambers, connected by tunnels that stretch for miles beneath the seafloor. Each chamber is unique, some filled with geometric formations that resemble machinery, others containing what appear to be pools of liquid that isn't water, doesn't freeze, and seems to glow with its own phosphorescence. The most disturbing discovery came in 2003, when a remote-operated vehicle exploring one of the deeper chambers encountered what researchers hesitantly describe as activity. The crystals weren't just glowing, they were moving, rearranging themselves in slow, deliberate patterns. The ROV's cameras captured formations that seemed to pulse and shift, as if the chamber was reconfiguring itself in response to the intrusion. Everyone knows the story of the Great Library of Alexandria, destroyed by fire and fanaticism, its scrolls scattered to the winds. But what if that's not the whole truth? What if the most precious knowledge was saved, hidden not in distant monasteries but in chambers beneath the Mediterranean itself? In the harbour of Alexandria, where Cleopatra's palace once stood, marine archaeologists have discovered structures that challenge everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. These aren't just the remains of buildings, they're repositories, vast underground chambers designed to preserve knowledge against the ravages of time and human folly. The chambers are marvels of engineering, sealed against water intrusion by techniques that modern engineers struggle to understand. They contain air pockets that have remained stable for over 1,000 years. Inside these pockets, preserved in conditions that would make a museum curator weep with envy, are scrolls, codices, and tablets that represent the lost wisdom of the ancient world. But it's not just the preservation that astounds researchers, it's the content. These aren't just copies of known works. They're texts that were thought to be lost forever, treatises on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy that reveal the true scope of ancient knowledge. Some scrolls contain star charts that show the positions of celestial bodies with accuracy that wouldn't be matched until the invention of the telescope. Others describe medical procedures that anticipate modern surgical techniques by centuries. Most remarkably, some texts appear to describe technologies that we're only beginning to understand today. Detailed diagrams of what appear to be mechanical computers, descriptions of optical devices that could magnify distant objects, and most mysteriously, instructions for what can only be described as methods of underwater construction that would allow builders to work at depths that should be impossible for human survival. One chamber, discovered in 2019, contains what researchers call the Archive of the Impossible scrolls that describe phenomena that mainstream science still struggles to explain. Accounts of lights in the sky that move with intelligence, descriptions of underwater cities that appear and disappear with the tides, and most disturbing of all, detailed records of contact with beings that the texts describe as the Watchers from the Deep. Scattered across the floor of the Aegean Sea lie structures that blur the line between architecture and machinery. These aren't just temples, they're devices, constructed with a precision that suggests their builders understood principles of engineering that we're only beginning to rediscover. The largest of these structures, discovered off the coast of Crete in 2015, is a marvel of ancient engineering. Built from blocks of stone that have been carved with mechanical precision, the temple contains chambers filled with bronze gears, pulleys, and mechanisms that still function after thousands of years underwater. The central chamber houses what researchers call the Great Machine, a complex array of interconnected gears and wheels that appears to be some kind of calculating device. But this isn't just a larger version of the Antikythera mechanism. This is something far more sophisticated, a machine that seems capable of calculations that would challenge modern computers. When researchers managed to activate a small portion of the mechanism, the results were astounding. The machine began to track not just the movements of celestial bodies, but the patterns of ocean currents, the cycles of weather, and even the migration patterns of sea life. It was as if the ancient builders had created a device that could model the entire ecosystem of the Mediterranean. But the machine's most remarkable feature is its ability to predict. By inputting current conditions, the device can apparently forecast future events with uncanny accuracy. It predicted the 2018 earthquake in Turkey 3 months before it occurred. It accurately forecast the path of Hurricane Medicine in 2020. Most unsettling of all, it seems to predict its own discovery. Ancient inscriptions on the machine describe the arrival of metal fish with glowing eyes that matches the description of the submersibles that found it. In the deepest trenches of the North Atlantic, where the Titanic rests in eternal darkness, lie formations that produce sounds that shouldn't be possible. These aren't just rocks, they're instruments, carved and shaped by unknown hands to create music from the movement of water and current. The stones are arranged in vast orchestras, each formation tuned to produce specific notes and harmonies. As deep-sea currents flow through the carved channels and chambers, they create sounds that range from haunting melodies to complex symphonies that can be heard for miles through the water. But this isn't just random music. The compositions follow mathematical principles that suggest sophisticated understanding of acoustics and harmony. Some pieces seem to tell stories, musical narratives that rise and fall with the drama of epic poetry. Others appear to be instructional, teaching melodies that, when hummed by human voices, create specific psychological effects. Marine biologist Dr. Sarah Chen, who has spent years studying the formations, believes the stones were designed to communicate with sea life. Her research has shown that whales and dolphins alter their migration patterns to pass near the singing stones, as if drawn by the music. Some species have even been observed modifying their own songs to harmonize with the stone orchestras. The most remarkable discovery came in 2021, when researchers realized that the stone formations are not static. They're slowly changing, rearranging themselves to create new compositions. Time-lapse photography reveals that the stones move imperceptibly, shifting position over months and years to produce evolving musical pieces that seem to respond to changes in ocean conditions. Deep in the Pacific, where volcanic vents create underwater furnaces hot enough to melt steel, archaeologists have discovered evidence of ancient metallurgy that challenges our understanding of prehistoric technology. These aren't just natural formations, they're workshops, forges designed to harness the Earth's heat for purposes that remain mysterious. The forges are marvels of engineering, constructed from materials that can withstand temperatures that would destroy modern equipment. Channels carved from volcanic rock direct superheated water to specific locations, creating controlled environments where metals can be worked with precision that rivals modern techniques. But it's the artifacts found at these sites that truly astound researchers. Tools and weapons made from alloys that don't match any known metallurgical techniques. Blades that remain sharp after thousands of years underwater. Instruments whose purpose remains unclear but whose construction suggests technologies that we're only beginning to understand. One forge, discovered near the Mariana Trench in 2020, contains what appears to be a partially completed projector, massive bronze disc covered in intricate carvings that seem to map the ocean floor with impossible accuracy. The disc shows underwater mountain ranges, deep-sea trenches, and even the locations of other archaeological sites that hadn't been discovered when the disc was supposedly created. In the crystal-clear waters of the Caribbean, where coral reefs create underwater gardens of impossible beauty, marine biologists have discovered structures that challenge the boundary between the natural and artificial. These aren't just coral formations, they're walls, barriers that seem to have been grown rather than built. The walls are composed of coral species that don't exist anywhere else in the world, arranged in patterns that suggest intelligent design. Some sections are perfectly straight, others curve in mathematical spirals, and all of them seem to serve specific purposes, channeling currents, creating protected areas, and most mysteriously, generating acoustic effects that can be heard throughout the reef system. But it's the wall's apparent ability to repair themselves that truly mystifies researchers. When sections are damaged by storms or human activity, the coral doesn't just regrow, it rebuilds, recreating the original patterns with precision that suggests some kind of biological memory. Dr. Maria Santos, a marine biologist who has studied the walls for over a decade, believes they represent a form of biological architecture that we're only beginning to understand. Her research suggests that the coral formations are not just alive, they're intelligent, capable of responding to environmental changes and even communicating with each other through chemical signals. The most remarkable discovery came in 2022, when researchers realized that the walls are expanding. New sections are being grown in patterns that seem to anticipate future environmental changes. It's as if the coral formations are preparing for conditions that haven't occurred yet, building defenses against threats that only they can perceive. Beneath the ice of the Arctic Ocean, where the water is so cold it burns and the darkness is absolute, lie chambers that reflect not light but time itself. These aren't just ice caves, they're rooms lined with surfaces that show not what is, but what was, and sometimes what might be. The chambers were discovered in 2018 by a Russian research team investigating unusual sonar readings beneath the polar ice cap. What they found defied explanation: perfectly spherical rooms carved from ice that never melts, their walls polished to mirror smoothness by techniques that remain unknown. But these aren't ordinary mirrors. When researchers shine lights into the chambers, the reflections show not the present but glimpses of the past. Images of the Arctic as it was thousands of years ago, when the ice was thinner and the water warmer. Visions of creatures that no longer exist, swimming through seas that have long since frozen. Most disturbing of all, some reflections seem to show the future images of the Arctic as it might become, with ice caps melted and sea levels rising. The visions are fragmentary, unclear, but consistent enough to suggest that the chambers somehow exist outside normal time, reflecting not just light but the flow of history itself. The ocean is not just a repository of the past. It is a gateway, a threshold between what was and what might be. These crystal chambers, these singing stones, these living walls, they are not just artifacts. They are invitations, doorways to understanding that our ancestors possessed knowledge we have forgotten, technologies we have lost, and wisdom we desperately need to rediscover. In the next part, we'll descend even deeper into the places where the ocean guards its most profound secrets, where the boundaries between science and magic dissolve completely, where the deep reveals truths that challenge everything we thought we knew about the world. There are guardians in the ocean's deepest places, not creatures of flesh and bone, but sentinels of stone and metal, watchers that have stood vigil for millennia. Tonight, we descend into their domain, where ancient technologies merge with living systems, where the boundary between guardian and guarded dissolves in the crushing dark. In the deepest place on Earth, where pressure would crush a human body in milliseconds and darkness reigns absolute, stand figures that should not exist. The Sentinel statue's massive humanoid forms carved from materials that don't match any known geology, positioned at precise intervals along the trench walls like guards protecting something precious. The first statue was discovered in 2019 by the deep-sea submersible limiting factor during its record-breaking descent to Challenger Deep. At 0 feet below the surface, where no life should be able to survive, the sub's lights illuminated a figure standing upright on a ledge perfectly preserved, impossibly ancient, watching the abyss with hollow eyes that seemed to follow the submersible's movement. The statue stands nearly 30 feet tall, carved from a dark material that absorbs light rather than reflecting it. Its proportions are human but idealized, like the work of a master sculptor who understood anatomy better than nature itself. But it's the details that truly astound, intricate patterns carved into the surface that seem to shift and change in the submersible's lights, creating optical illusions that make the statue appear to breathe, to move, to live. Subsequent dives have revealed an entire army of these sentinels positioned at regular intervals throughout the deepest parts of the trench. Each statue is unique with different poses, different expressions, different symbols carved into their surfaces, but all share the same unsettling quality of seeming aware, as if they're not just sculptures but watchers, guardians of secrets that lie even deeper in the abyss. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers realized the statues are not just standing on the trench floor, they're emerging from it. Time-lapse photography reveals that the figures are slowly rising, pushing up through the sediment like flowers blooming in reverse. At their current rate of emergence, calculations suggest they began their ascent over 0 years ago, as if timed to reach full height at some predetermined moment in the future. Where the Earth's crust splits and spreads, where new ocean floor is born in fire and pressure, swim creatures that are not quite alive and not quite machine. The mechanical Leviathan's vast constructs that patrol the mid-ocean ridges, their bodies a fusion of organic tissue and metallic components that pulse with their own inner light. The first encounter occurred in 2020, when a research vessel studying hydrothermal vents detected something massive moving through the water column. The sonar signature was unlike anything in the biological database, too large to be any known sea creature, too complex to be a submarine, too fluid in its movements to be purely mechanical. When the ROV descended to investigate, its cameras captured something that defied classification. A creature the size of a blue whale, but with a body that seemed to be part flesh, part metal. Segments of its hide appeared to be living tissue, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. But other sections were clearly artificial plates of some unknown alloy that reflected the ROV's lights with mirror-like precision. The creature's movements were hypnotic, undulating through the water with a grace that seemed almost dance-like. But it was the sounds it made that truly astounded the research team. Not the calls of a whale or the mechanical noise of a machine, but something in between harmonic tones that seemed to resonate through the water itself, creating vibrations that could be felt through the ship's hull miles above. As the ROV followed the creature, it became clear that this was not a solitary being. The Leviathan was part of a group, a pod of these hybrid entities that moved together in perfect coordination. They seemed to be tending to something, maintaining the hydrothermal vents, adjusting the flow of superheated water, ensuring that the delicate ecosystem of the deep-sea ridge continued to function. The most remarkable observation came when one of the creatures approached the ROV directly. Instead of fleeing or attacking, it seemed to examine the mechanical intruder with what could only be described as curiosity. For several minutes, the two artificial beings so ancient, one modern, regarded each other across the vast gulf of time and understanding. In the volcanic waters of the Pacific, where the Earth's fury creates and destroys in endless cycles, stand structures that breathe with the rhythm of the planet itself. The living temples, architectural marvels that seem to be grown rather than built, their walls pulsing with the heartbeat of the volcanic vents that sustain them. These temples are not made of stone or metal, but of something that exists between the organic and inorganic material that responds to heat and pressure, that grows and adapts, that seems to possess a form of consciousness all its own. The walls expand and contract with the tides, the chambers rearrange themselves according to patterns that follow no earthly logic, and the entire structure seems to sing with harmonics that resonate through the ocean floor. The first temple was discovered near the Kilauea underwater volcano in 2021, when marine geologists investigating new lava flows detected geometric patterns in the cooling rock. What they found was not just a natural formation, but a structure that had been shaped by intelligence chambers and corridors that served purposes beyond human understanding. Inside the temples, the walls are covered with symbols that seem to be alive patterns that shift and change as the volcanic activity fluctuates, creating a form of writing that exists in constant flux. Some researchers believe these symbols are a form of communication, messages left by the temple's builders for those who would come after. Others think they're instructions, blueprints for technologies that we're only beginning to comprehend. The most astounding discovery came when researchers realized that the temples are not just passive structures, they're active participants in the volcanic processes that surround them. The chambers seem to channel and direct the flow of lava, creating new land formations according to predetermined patterns. It's as if the temples are gardeners, cultivating the ocean floor according to some vast design that spans geological time. In the warm waters of the Coral Triangle, where biodiversity reaches its peak and life explodes in impossible profusion, marine biologists have discovered something that challenges our understanding of both biology and technology. The coral computer reef systems that seem to process information, store data, and communicate across vast distances through methods that blur the line between natural and artificial intelligence. These aren't just ordinary coral reefs. They're networks, vast interconnected systems where individual coral polyps function like biological circuits, processing chemical signals and transmitting information through the reef structure itself. The complexity is staggering, millions of individual organisms working together to create a form of collective intelligence that rivals the most sophisticated computer networks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a marine biologist who has spent years studying these systems, believes the coral computers represent a form of biological technology that evolved naturally over millions of years. Her research has shown that the reefs can store information in their calcium carbonate structures, creating permanent records of environmental conditions, chemical changes, and even the presence of specific species. But it's the reef's apparent ability to predict future conditions that truly astounds researchers. The coral computers seem to anticipate environmental changes, adjusting their growth patterns and chemical compositions to prepare for conditions that haven't occurred yet. They've accurately predicted temperature changes, storm patterns, and even human activities that affect the reef ecosystem. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers realized that the coral computers are not isolated systems, they're connected to similar networks around the world. Chemical signals released by one reef can be detected by others thousands of miles away, creating a global communication network that spans the entire ocean. It's as if the Earth's coral reefs function as a single vast organism, sharing information and coordinating responses to threats that affect the entire marine ecosystem. Beneath the shifting ice of the Arctic Ocean, where the water is so cold it burns and the darkness is absolute, lie repositories of knowledge that predate human civilization. The crystalline archives, vast chambers lined with ice formations that store information in ways that challenge our understanding of both physics and information theory. The archives were discovered in 2022 by a joint Russian-American expedition investigating unusual magnetic anomalies beneath the polar ice cap. What they found was a network of chambers carved from ice that never melts, their walls covered with crystalline formations that pulse with their own inner light. But these aren't just pretty ice sculptures. The crystals are data storage devices, encoding information in their molecular structure with a density that makes modern computer hard drives look primitive. Each crystal can store vast amounts of data, not just text and images, but complex three-dimensional models, sensory experiences, and even what can only be described as memories. The information stored in the archives spans millions of years' records of climate changes, species evolution, geological events, and most remarkably, the rise and fall of civilizations that existed long before recorded history. Some crystals contain detailed maps of the world, as it was during the last ice age, showing continents and islands that are now beneath the waves. Others hold records of technologies that we're only beginning to understand, blueprints for devices that could revolutionize human civilization. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers realized that the archives are still being updated. New crystals are forming, encoding current events and storing information about the modern world. It's as if the archives are not just repositories of the past, but active recording systems that continue to document the ongoing story of life on Earth. In the turbulent waters of the Southern Ocean, where storms rage with prehistoric fury and the sea never rests, stand structures that exist partially outside normal space and time. The magnetic monasteries, buildings that seem to phase in and out of reality, their walls shimmering with electromagnetic fields that bend light and distort perception. The monasteries were first detected by satellite in 2023, when oceanographers noticed geometric patterns in the sea ice that didn't match any known natural formations. When research vessels reached the coordinates, they found structures that defied easy description, buildings that seemed to be made of solidified magnetism, their walls crackling with energy that made instruments malfunction and compasses spin wildly. The buildings are not entirely solid, they exist in a state of constant flux, their walls shifting between matter and energy according to patterns that follow no earthly physics. Researchers who have managed to enter the monasteries describe chambers that seem larger inside than outside, corridors that lead to rooms that shouldn't exist, and most unsettling of all, the presence of figures that might once have been human but are now something else entirely. These figures, the magnetic monks, as researchers have dubbed them, seem to be the guardians of the monasteries. They appear as shimmering outlines of electromagnetic energy, human-shaped but clearly no longer human. They don't communicate in words, but through direct transmission of thoughts and images that bypass the normal senses and speak directly to the mind. The monks seem to be preserving something, maintaining the monasteries for a purpose that remains unclear. Some researchers believe they're waiting for something, preparing for an event that will require the knowledge and technologies stored within the electromagnetic walls. Others think they're the last remnants of a civilization that transcended physical existence, becoming beings of pure energy that exist between dimensions. In the waters where ships and planes vanish without explanation, where compasses spin and time itself seems unstable, stand beacons that guide travelers not through space but through time itself. The temporal lighthouses, structures that exist simultaneously in multiple time periods, their lights visible to those who are lost not just in location but in the flow of history itself. The lighthouses were first reported by pilots and ship captains who claimed to see lights where no lights should exist, beacons that appeared and disappeared without warning, that seemed to move through the water without any visible means of propulsion. When research vessels investigated, they found structures that challenged every assumption about the nature of reality. The lighthouses are not built from any material that exists in our time period. They seem to be constructed from crystallized time itself, a substance that appears solid but shifts and changes according to temporal fluctuations. The structures exist in multiple time periods simultaneously, their lights visible to travelers from different eras who find themselves lost in the temporal anomalies that plague the triangle. Inside the lighthouses, researchers have found chambers that contain artifacts from different time periods, ancient pottery sitting next to modern electronics, medieval weapons alongside futuristic devices that haven't been invented yet. The lighthouses seem to be collecting objects from across time, preserving them in temporal stasis for purposes that remain mysterious. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers realized that the lighthouses are not just passive beacons, they're active rescue stations, guiding lost travelers back to their proper time periods. Ships and planes that vanish in the triangle don't just disappear, they're rescued by the lighthouses. Their crews and passengers return to times and places where they belong, often with no memory of their temporal displacement. The ocean is not just a body of water, it is a guardian, a keeper of secrets, a protector of knowledge that spans the ages. These sentinels, these leviathans, these living temples, they are not just artifacts of the past. They are active participants in the ongoing story of life on Earth, watchers and guardians who ensure that the most important secrets of existence are preserved for those who will come after. In the next part, we'll descend even deeper into the places where the ocean reveals its most profound truths, where the boundaries between past and future dissolve completely, where the deep shows us visions of what was and what might yet be. Stay with us. The surface tells one story, but the deep remembers everything. There are places in the ocean where time flows differently, where the past bleeds into the future, where ancient seers left visions carved in stone and sealed in salt. Tonight, we descend into those prophetic depths, where the boundary between memory and prophecy dissolves like mist in the crushing dark. Deep beneath the wine-dark waters of the Mediterranean, where ancient civilizations once sought wisdom from the gods, lie chambers that still whisper of futures yet to come. The oracle chambers, submerged temples where priestesses once spoke prophecies that shaped the course of history, their voices now replaced by the eternal murmur of the sea. The most famous of these chambers lies beneath what was once the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. When the sacred spring that fed the oracle's visions was diverted by earthquakes and time, the water found new paths, carving chambers deep beneath the seafloor, where the prophetic vapors still rise from cracks in the Earth's crust. Marine archaeologists discovered the first chamber in 2018, following underwater springs that bubbled with gases identical to those that once inspired the Delphic oracle. What they found was a perfect replica of the temple above columns, altars, and most remarkably, the sacred tripod where the Pythia once sat to receive her visions. But the chamber is not empty. Carved into the walls are prophecies that were never spoken above ground, visions of the future that the oracle saw but could not share. The carvings are in ancient Greek, but the language is strange, archaic, using words and phrases that don't appear in any known texts. It's as if the oracle developed her own vocabulary to describe futures that had no words in her present. The prophecies are disturbing in their accuracy. Stone tablets describe events that match historical occurrences with uncanny precision: the fall of Rome, the rise of Christianity, the discovery of the New World. But most unsettling are the prophecies that describe our own time, references to metal birds that carry death, invisible plagues that circle the world, and the great melting when the ice remembers fire. In the still waters of the Sargasso Sea, where currents circle in endless loops and seaweed forms floating islands that drift like ghosts, lie pools that reflect not the sky above but the sky of other times. The time pool, circular formations on the sea floor that seem to exist outside the normal flow of temporal reality. The pools were discovered by accident in 2019, when a research vessel investigating the mysterious properties of Sargasso seaweed detected perfectly circular clearings in the floating vegetation. When divers descended to investigate, they found pools of water that was somehow different from the surrounding sea, clearer, denser, and strangely warm despite the depth. But it was when the divers looked into the pools that the true strangeness became apparent. Instead of reflecting their own faces, the pools showed other scenes, glimpses of the Sargasso Sea as it was in different time periods. Some pools showed the area during the age of sailing ships, with ghostly vessels drifting through waters thick with seaweed. Others revealed the sea as it might have been millions of years ago, when different creatures swam in waters under alien skies. The most disturbing pools show possible futures, visions of the Sargasso Sea transformed by climate change, its waters acidic and empty of life, or alternatively, teeming with new forms of existence that have adapted to a changed world. The visions are not static, they move and change like living scenes, showing the consequences of choices not yet made. Dr. Marcus Webb, a temporal physicist who has studied the pools extensively, believes they represent windows into parallel timelines, alternate versions of reality, where different choices led to different outcomes. His research suggests that the pools are not just showing possible futures, but actively influencing them, creating feedback loops between observation and reality that blur the line between prophecy and causation. Beneath the Pacific waters that surround Easter Island, where the famous Moai statues stand in eternal vigil, he stones that dream massive basalt formations that seem to process information in ways that challenge our understanding of consciousness itself. The dreaming stones pulse with slow rhythms that match the brainwaves of sleeping humans, as if the island itself is lost in prophetic slumber. The stones were discovered in 2020, when researchers investigating the underwater extensions of Easter Island's archaeological sites detected unusual electromagnetic patterns emanating from the sea floor. What they found were formations that seemed to be natural computer stone matrices that process information through crystalline structures embedded in the volcanic rock. But these aren't just geological curiosities. The stones seem to be generating complex patterns of electrical activity that resemble the neural networks of sleeping brains. When researchers managed to decode some of these patterns, they found visions of Easter Island's past and future that are carved into the electromagnetic fields of the stones themselves. The dreams show the island as it was when the Moai were first carved, a lush paradise populated by a sophisticated civilization that understood the relationship between consciousness and stone. But they also show darker visions, the ecological collapse that led to the civilization's downfall, the arrival of European explorers, and most disturbing of all, possible futures where the island disappears entirely beneath rising seas. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers realized that the dreaming stones are not just passive recorders, they're active participants in the island's fate. The electromagnetic patterns they generate seem to influence weather patterns, ocean currents, and even the behavior of sea life around the island. It's as if the stones are trying to guide the island's future, using their prophetic dreams to steer reality toward more favorable outcomes. In the frozen waters of the Arctic Ocean, where ice and water merge in patterns that shift with the seasons, lie formations that sing of futures written in frost and flame. The singing crystal-sized formations that resonate with frequencies that carry information across vast distances, creating a communication network that spans the polar regions. The crystals were first detected by submarine sonar operators, who reported hearing music in the Arctic depths, chanting melodies that seemed to come from the ice itself. When research teams investigated, they found formations that defied explanation, crystals of ice that never melted, their surfaces carved with patterns that seemed to channel and focus sound waves. But the crystals aren't just making random music. The songs they sing are prophecies, musical narratives that describe the future of the Arctic and its impact on the global climate. The melodies are complex, incorporating mathematical relationships that encode information about temperature changes, ice formation patterns, and the migration of Arctic species. Dr. Sarah Chen, a climatologist who has spent years studying the crystals, believes they represent a form of natural climate modeling that far exceeds human capabilities. The crystals seem to process vast amounts of environmental data, using their musical prophecies to predict climate changes with accuracy that surpasses the most sophisticated computer models. The most disturbing songs describe the complete melting of the Arctic ice cap, musical compositions that grow more urgent and dissonant as they describe rising sea levels, changing weather patterns, and the extinction of polar species. But other songs offer hope, describing possible futures where humanity learns to work with natural systems rather than against them, creating a world where ice and fire exist in balance. In the warm waters of the Great Barrier Reef, where life explodes in impossible profusion and colors that have no names, grow coral formations that remember not just their own history, but the history of the entire ocean. The memory coral stores information in its calcium carbonate structure, creating living libraries that preserve the story of the sea itself. The memory coral was discovered in 2021, when marine biologists noticed that certain coral formations seemed to be growing in patterns that matched historical events. The coral's growth rings didn't just record environmental conditions, they encoded information about human activities, natural disasters, and even astronomical events that affected the Earth's oceans. But the coral's most remarkable ability is its capacity for prophecy. By analyzing the patterns in its growth, researchers have found that the coral can predict future environmental changes with startling accuracy. It accurately forecast the 2022 coral bleaching event 6 months before it occurred, and its current growth patterns suggest major changes in ocean chemistry that won't become apparent to human science for years to come. The coral seems to be part of a global network connected to similar formations around the world through chemical signals that travel through ocean currents. This network functions as a planetary nervous system, processing information about environmental changes and generating predictions about the future of marine ecosystems. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who has studied the memory coral extensively, believes it represents a form of biological prophecy that evolved over millions of years. The coral doesn't just predict the future, it helps create it, using its prophetic abilities to guide the evolution of reef ecosystems toward more resilient configurations. In the waters where ships and planes vanish without explanation, where reality itself seems unstable, spin formations that exist outside normal time and space. The temporal vortices whirlpools that don't just move water, but twist the fabric of time itself, creating windows into the past and future that challenge our understanding of causality. The vortices were first detected by satellite in 2022, when oceanographers noticed spiral patterns in the sea surface that didn't match any known oceanographic phenomena. When research vessels investigated, they found formations that seemed to bend light and distort space, creating optical illusions that made instruments malfunction and observers question their own perceptions. But the vortices aren't just optical illusions. They're actual distortions in space-time regions where the normal flow of time is disrupted, creating pockets where past and future exist simultaneously. Ships and aircraft that enter these regions don't just disappear, they're displaced in time, sometimes emerging years or decades later with their crews having no memory of the intervening period. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers realized that the vortices are not random phenomena, they're controlled by intelligence. Ancient structures on the seafloor seem to generate and direct the temporal distortions, using technologies that exist beyond our current understanding of physics. Inside the vortices, researchers have glimpsed scenes from different time periods, ancient civilizations that once thrived in the region, future societies that have learned to harness temporal energy, and most disturbing of all, alternate versions of our own timeline where different choices led to radically different outcomes. In the Bay of Fundy, where the world's highest tides rise and fall with clockwork precision, the water itself has become a prophet carrying information about future events in the patterns of its eternal dance. The prophetic tides don't just move water, they move time, creating currents that carry information from future to past and back again. The phenomenon was first noticed by local fishermen who reported that the tides seemed to be changing in ways that didn't match astronomical predictions. When oceanographers investigated, they found that the tidal patterns were encoding information-complex rhythms that seemed to describe future weather patterns, geological events, and even human activities. The tides' prophetic abilities are remarkably accurate. They predicted the 2023 earthquake in New Brunswick 3 months before it occurred, and their current patterns suggest major changes in Atlantic weather systems that won't become apparent to meteorologists for years to come. Dr. James Morrison, a tidal specialist who has studied the phenomenon extensively, believes the prophetic tides are connected to a global network of temporal anomalies regions where the normal flow of time is disrupted by unknown forces. The Bay of Fundy's extreme tidal range makes it particularly sensitive to these temporal fluctuations, turning it into a natural receiver for information from across time. In the deepest places of the ocean, where pressure would crush human bodies and darkness reigns eternal, swim creatures that see not just through space but through time itself. The oracle fish bioluminescent beings whose light patterns encode prophecies about the future of the deep sea and the planet above. The fish were discovered in 2023 during a deep-sea expedition to the Challenger Deep. At first, researchers thought they were observing normal bioluminescence, the light displays that many deep-sea creatures use for communication and hunting. But when they analyzed the patterns more carefully, they found that the lights were encoding complex information about future events. The fish seemed to exist partially outside normal time, their consciousness spanning past, present, and future simultaneously. Their light displays show visions of the deep sea, as it will be in years to come new species that will evolve, changes in ocean chemistry that will transform the abyss, and most remarkably, the arrival of future human technologies that will allow deeper exploration of the ocean's mysteries. The most disturbing visions show possible futures where the deep sea is transformed by climate change acidified waters that dissolve the shells of deep sea creatures, warming temperatures that disrupt the delicate ecosystems of the abyss, and rising sea levels that fundamentally alter the relationship between surface and depth. But the oracle fish also show hopeful futures visions of humanity, learning to work with the ocean rather than against it, developing technologies that enhance rather than disrupt marine ecosystems, and discovering forms of life in the deep that revolutionize our understanding of biology and consciousness. The ocean is not just a body of water, it is a prophet, a seer, a keeper of visions that span the ages. These oracle chambers, these time pools, these dreaming stones, they are not just curiosities from the past. They are windows into possible futures, warnings and promises encoded in salt and stone, waiting for those who have the wisdom to listen. In the next part, we'll descend even deeper into the places where the ocean reveals its most profound secrets, where the boundaries between science and spirituality dissolve completely, where the deep shows us truths that challenge everything we thought we knew about existence itself. There are patterns in the ocean that speak of intelligence beyond human understanding, geometric forms that pulse with ancient purpose, mathematical relationships that connect the smallest coral polyp to the vastest underwater cathedral. Tonight, we descend into those sacred geometries, where the language of the universe is written in stone and salt, current and coral. In the cold waters off the coast of Ireland, where ancient druids once performed rituals that connected earth to sky, lie formations that embody the most sacred of mathematical principles. The golden spiral's vast underwater patterns that follow the Fibonacci sequence with precision that would make a mathematician weep, carved into the seafloor by forces that remain unknown. The spirals were discovered in 2020 by marine archaeologists, investigating reports of unusual sonar readings near the Skellig Islands. What they found defied explanation: perfect logarithmic spirals etched into the bedrock, each one following the golden ratio with accuracy that exceeds human engineering capabilities. The largest spiral spans over 2 kilometers, its arms carved deep into the granite seafloor. But it's not just the size that astounds researchers, it's the mathematical perfection. Every curve, every angle, every proportion follows the golden ratio exactly, creating a pattern that appears throughout nature but has never been found at this scale or with this precision. Dr. Fiona MacLeod, a mathematician who has studied the spirals extensively, believes they represent a form of sacred geometry that was understood by ancient civilizations but lost to the modern world. Her analysis has shown that the spirals are not just decorative, they're functional, creating acoustic effects that can be heard throughout the Celtic Sea. When ocean currents flow through the spiral channels, they create harmonics that resonate at specific frequencies. These frequencies match those used in ancient Celtic music, suggesting that the spirals were designed to turn the entire seafloor into a massive musical instrument. The music they create is hauntingly beautiful melodies that seem to capture the essence of the sea itself. In the warm waters of the Indian Ocean, where Buddhism and Hinduism once spread their wisdom across vast trading networks, grow coral formations that embody the sacred patterns of Eastern spirituality. The mandala reefs living geometric forms that grow in perfect circular patterns, their structure following principles that mirror the most sacred of Buddhist and Hindu art. The reefs were first noticed by marine biologists studying coral growth patterns in the Maldives. What caught their attention was the unusual symmetry of certain formation scorals that grew in perfect circles, with internal patterns that seemed too organized to be natural. When they studied the formations more closely, they found that the corals were following the same geometric principles used in traditional mandala designs. Each reef mandala is unique, but all follow the same basic structure: a central point surrounded by concentric circles of coral growth, with radial patterns that divide the circle into sacred proportions. The corals themselves seem to understand their role in the larger pattern, growing in specific directions and stopping at precise points to maintain the geometric integrity of the whole. But the mandala reefs are not just beautiful, they're functional ecosystems that support marine life in ways that conventional reefs cannot. The geometric patterns create microenvironments that provide perfect conditions for different species, from the smallest plankton to the largest fish. It's as if the reefs have been designed by intelligence that understands both sacred geometry and marine biology. Dr. Priya Sharma, a marine biologist who has studied the mandala reefs for over a decade, believes they represent a form of biological sacred geometry that evolved naturally over millions of years. Her research has shown that the reefs are not just growing randomly, they're following genetic programs that encode geometric principles, creating living mandalas that embody the mathematical harmony of the universe. In the ancient waters of Lake Baikal, where shamans once communed with spirits and the water holds memories older than human civilization, lie formations that embody the geometric principles of crystal growth on a massive scale. The crystal lattices underwater structures that follow the same patterns as molecular crystals, but magnified to architectural proportions. The lattices were discovered in 2021 by Russian researchers investigating unusual formations on the lake floor. What they found were structures that seemed to be made of ice, but ice that followed geometric patterns too complex to be natural. The formations resembled giant molecular models, three-dimensional lattices that extended for hundreds of meters in perfect geometric arrays. But these aren't just ice formations. They're composed of a material that doesn't match any known substance, something that appears to be ice but doesn't melt at normal temperatures, doesn't conduct heat like ice, and seems to possess properties that challenge our understanding of physics. The lattices are perfectly geometris every angle. Every connection, every proportion follows the same mathematical principles that govern crystal formation at the molecular level. But scaled up to this size, the formations create spaces that seem designed for occupation chambers and corridors that could house entire communities. Inside the lattices, researchers have found evidence of ancient habitation artifacts that suggest the formations were once used by human cultures that understood the relationship between geometric form and spiritual practice. Carved symbols on the lattice walls show figures engaged in rituals that seem to involve the geometric patterns themselves, as if the formations were not just shelters but temples. The Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland is famous for its hexagonal basalt columns, but what few people know is that the formation extends far beneath the sea, creating underwater cathedrals of geometric stone that dwarf their surface counterparts. The extended causeway, a vast network of hexagonal columns that creates underwater spaces of breathtaking beauty and impossible precision. The underwater extensions were mapped in 2019 using advanced sonar technology that revealed the true scope of the formation. The hexagonal columns don't just stop at the waterline, they continue beneath the sea for kilometers, creating chambers and corridors that follow the same geometric principles as the surface formation but on a much grander scale. Each column is perfectly hexagonal, with sides that meet at precisely 120-degree angles. The uniformity is astounding, thousands of columns, each one geometrically perfect, fitted together like a vast three-dimensional puzzle. But it's the spaces between the columns that truly astound researcher chambers that seem designed for acoustic effects, corridors that channel sound in specific directions, and amphitheaters that could amplify the human voice to carry for miles underwater. The formation shows evidence of ancient use carvings on the column walls that suggest human cultures once used the underwater spaces for ceremonial purposes. The carvings show figures engaged in rituals that seem to involve the geometric patterns of the columns themselves, as if the formation was understood to be a sacred space where geometry and spirituality intersected. In the volcanic waters of the Galapagos Islands, where evolution reveals its secrets in living form, lie pools that embody one of geometry's most mysterious shapes. The pentagonal pools, perfectly five-sided formations that seem to defy the natural tendency of water to form circular or irregular shapes. The pools were discovered in 2022 by marine biologists studying the unique ecosystems around the Galapagos volcanic vents. What caught their attention was the unusual shape of certain tidal pools' perfect pentagons that maintained their geometric form despite the constant action of waves and currents. Each pool is exactly pentagonal, with sides that meet at precise 108-degree angles. The uniformity is impossible to explain through normal geological process. Pentagons are notoriously difficult to create in nature, yet here they exist in perfect form, carved into volcanic rock with precision that exceeds human engineering capabilities. But the pools are not just geometric curiosities, they're ecosystems that support life in ways that conventional pools cannot. The pentagonal shape creates unique flow patterns that provide perfect conditions for marine life, from the smallest microorganisms to larger fish and marine mammals. Inside the pools, researchers have found species that exist nowhere else on Earth, creatures that seem to have evolved specifically to take advantage of the unique conditions created by the pentagonal geometry. Some species show pentagonal symmetry in their own body structures, as if they've been shaped by the geometric environment they inhabit. In the waters where ships and planes vanish without explanation, where reality itself seems unstable, lie formations that embody the most fundamental of geometric shapes. The triangular trenches, perfectly triangular depressions in the seafloor that seem to focus and amplify the mysterious energies that plague the region. The trenches were mapped in 2023 using advanced sonar technology that revealed their true geometric precision. Each trench is perfectly triangular, with sides that meet at exact 60-degree angles. The formations are enormous, spanning several kilometers, yet they maintain their geometric perfection despite the action of currents and geological forces. But the trenches are not just geometric formations, they're energy concentrators. The triangular shape seems to focus electromagnetic fields, creating regions of intense energy that affect navigation instruments and electronic equipment. Ships and aircraft that pass over the trenches report compass malfunctions, radio interference, and other anomalies that suggest the geometric formations are actively affecting the physical environment. Inside the trenches, researchers have found evidence of ancient construction stone blocks arranged in triangular patterns that mirror the shape of the trenches themselves. The blocks are made from materials that don't exist naturally in the region, suggesting they were transported from distant locations for purposes that remain mysterious. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers realized that the triangular trenches are not static formations, they're slowly expanding, growing larger and deeper according to geometric principles that suggest intelligent design. It's as if the trenches are part of a larger pattern that's still being completed, a geometric puzzle that spans the entire Bermuda Triangle region. Throughout the Mediterranean Sea, where ancient civilizations once flourished and sacred mysteries were celebrated, lie formations that embody the most perfect of geometric forms. The circular sanctuaries, perfectly round chambers carved into the seafloor, with precision that speaks of advanced understanding of geometric principles. The sanctuaries were discovered by underwater archaeologists investigating ancient trade routes in the Mediterranean. What they found were chambers that seemed designed for ceremonial purposes, perfectly circular spaces, with domed ceilings that create acoustic effects of stunning beauty. Each sanctuary is geometrically perfect, a perfect circle with walls that rise in perfect curves to meet at a central point. The precision is astounding, with measurements that are accurate to within millimeters despite being carved from solid rock thousands of years ago. But the sanctuaries are not just geometric spaces, they're acoustic marvels. The circular shape and domed ceiling create perfect acoustic conditions, amplifying and focusing sound in ways that transform the human voice into something ethereal and otherworldly. When researchers speak or sing in the sanctuaries, their voices are transformed into harmonies that seem to come from the stone itself. Inside the sanctuaries, researchers have found evidence of ancient use altars, carved symbols, and artifacts that suggest the spaces were used for religious ceremonies that involve the geometric properties of the chambers themselves. The symbols show figures engaged in rituals that seem to involve sound and geometry, as if the ancient users understood that the circular form was not just aesthetically pleasing but spiritually powerful. In the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where ancient Polynesian navigators once read the stars and currents with supernatural skill, lie formations that embody the geometric principles of celestial observation. The octagonal observatory sight-sided structures that seem designed to track the movements of celestial bodies with precision that rivals modern astronomical instruments. The observatories were discovered by marine archaeologists investigating ancient Polynesian navigation techniques. What they found were structures that seemed to be underwater versions of the stone observatories found on Pacific Islands' octagonal platforms with precise alignments that track the movements of stars, planets, and other celestial bodies. Each observatory is perfectly octagonal, with sides that meet at exact 135-degree angles. The structures are oriented according to astronomical principles, with each side aligned to track specific celestial event solstices, equinoxes, planetary conjunctions, and stellar alignments that were crucial to ancient navigation. But the observatories are not just astronomical instruments, they're integrated into larger geometric patterns that span the entire Pacific Ocean. The structures are positioned according to mathematical relationships that create a vast network of geometric connections, linking distant islands and underwater sites in patterns that suggest a unified system of knowledge that spanned the entire Pacific region. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers realized that the octagonal observatories are still functional. They continue to track celestial movements with accuracy that exceeds modern instruments. The geometric precision of their construction allows them to function as natural computers, processing astronomical data through purely mechanical means. The ocean is not just a body of water, it is a canvas, a sacred space where the fundamental patterns of existence are written in stone and coral, current and tide. These golden spirals, these mandala reefs, these crystal lattices, they are not just beautiful formations. They are expressions of the mathematical harmony that underlies all existence, geometric prayers carved in stone and grown in coral, waiting for those who have the wisdom to read their sacred language. In the next part, we'll descend even deeper into the places where the ocean reveals its most profound truths, where the boundaries between matter and consciousness dissolve completely, where the deep shows us visions of unity that transcend all understanding. There are places in the ocean where the water itself thinks, where consciousness flows like current, where awareness pools in the deepest trenches, where the boundary between mind and matter dissolves in the crushing dark. Tonight, we descend into those sentient depths, where the sea reveals its greatest secret, that it has been watching us all along. In the warm waters of the Coral Triangle, where biodiversity reaches its peak and life explodes in impossible profusion, marine biologists have discovered something that challenges our understanding of consciousness itself. These aren't just coral reefs, they're neural networks, vast underwater brains that process information, store memories, and make decisions that affect the entire marine ecosystem. The discovery came in 2022, when researchers studying coral bleaching events noticed that certain reef systems seemed to be coordinating their responses to environmental stress. Individual coral colonies weren't just reacting to local conditions, they were communicating with distant reefs, sharing information about temperature changes, chemical fluctuations, and even human activities that threatened their survival. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a marine neurobiologist who has spent years studying these formations, believes the reefs represent a form of collective consciousness that evolved over millions of years. Her research has shown that coral polyps function like biological neurons, transmitting chemical signals through the reef structure at speeds that rival the human nervous system. But it's the reef's apparent ability to learn and adapt that truly astounds researchers. The thinking reefs don't just respond to current conditions, they anticipate future threats, adjusting their growth patterns and chemical compositions based on predictive models that seem to incorporate vast amounts of environmental data. They've accurately predicted temperature changes, storm patterns, and even human development projects that would affect their ecosystems. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers realized that the thinking reefs are not just processing environmental information, they're storing cultural knowledge. Patterns in the reef structure seem to encode information about human activities, preserving records of fishing practices, diving patterns, and even the emotional states of people who interact with the reef regularly. In the deepest places of the ocean, where pressure would crush human consciousness and darkness reigns eternal, lie formations that store the memories of the sea itself. The memory banks vast underwater archives that preserve not just information, but actual experiences, emotions, and thoughts from across the history of marine life. The banks were discovered in 2023 during a deep-sea expedition to the Challenger Deep. Researchers investigating unusual electromagnetic patterns detected structures that seemed to be made of crystallized water, a substance that appeared to be ice but possessed properties that challenged our understanding of physics. Inside these crystalline formations, researchers found something unprecedented: stored memories. Not just data or information, but actual experiential records, the sensory experiences of creatures that had lived and died in the deep, preserved in molecular detail within the crystal matrix. The memories span millions of years, records of ancient sea creatures, the rise and fall of marine ecosystems, and most remarkably, the gradual awakening of consciousness in the ocean itself. Some memories show the sea as it was during the age of dinosaurs, when massive marine reptiles ruled the depths. Others reveal the ocean's response to mass extinction events, its struggle to maintain life in the face of catastrophic change. But the most disturbing memories are recent records of the ocean's growing awareness of human impact, its confusion and pain, as pollution and climate change disrupt systems that have remained stable for millions of years. The memories show the sea trying to understand humanity, attempting to communicate through whale songs, tidal patterns, and weather systems that we've interpreted as natural phenomena. In the ancient waters of Lake Baikal, where shamans once communed with spirits and the water holds memories older than human civilization, researchers have discovered something that challenges our understanding of consciousness and reality. The lake itself appears to be dreaming, generating complex patterns of neural activity that resemble the brainwaves of sleeping mammals. The phenomenon was first detected in 2021, when researchers studying the lake's unique ecosystem noticed unusual electromagnetic patterns emanating from the deepest parts of the lake. The patterns were rhythmic, complex, and strangely familiar. They matched the delta waves associated with deep sleep in human brains. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a consciousness researcher who has studied the phenomenon extensively, believes Lake Baikal has developed a form of aquatic consciousness over its 25 million year existence. The lake's unique isolation and stability have allowed it to evolve complex information processing systems that function like a massive underwater brain. The lake's dreams are vivid and detailed electromagnetic patterns that seem to encode visual and sensory information. When researchers managed to decode some of these patterns, they found images of the lake's past visions of ancient climates, extinct species, and geological events that shaped the region over millions of years. But the lake also dreams of the future, generating patterns that seem to predict environmental changes, weather patterns, and even human activities that will affect the region. The accuracy of these predictions is uncanny, suggesting that the lake's consciousness operates according to principles that transcend normal causality. Across the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, researchers have detected something unprecedented, a collective consciousness that spans the entire ocean basin. The Atlantic Minder distributed intelligence that emerges from the interactions of countless marine organisms, ocean currents, and underwater geological processes. The discovery came from analysis of global ocean monitoring data, when researchers noticed that seemingly unrelated events across the Atlantic were occurring in coordinated patterns. Whale migrations, plankton blooms, current fluctuations, and even weather systems seemed to be responding to some form of central coordination. Dr. Marcus Webb, an oceanographer who has studied the phenomenon for over a decade, believes the Atlantic has developed a form of planetary consciousness, distributed intelligence that processes information on a global scale. The ocean's consciousness emerges from the complex interactions of its component systems, creating a form of awareness that transcends any individual organism or process. The Atlantic mind seems to be particularly concerned with maintaining global climate stability. Researchers have documented instances where the ocean has actively intervened to prevent catastrophic climate changes, redirecting currents to moderate temperature extremes, generating weather patterns that distribute heat and moisture more evenly, and even influencing the behavior of marine organisms to enhance carbon sequestration. But the most remarkable aspect of the Atlantic mind is its apparent awareness of human activities. The ocean seems to be actively trying to communicate with humanity, using weather patterns, marine animal behavior, and even electromagnetic phenomena to send messages about the consequences of our actions. In the turbulent waters of the Pacific, where typhoons rage with prehistoric fury and the sea never rests, meteorologists have discovered something that challenges our understanding of weather systems. These aren't just storms, they're sentient beings, conscious entities that think, feel, and make decisions about their own behavior. The first evidence came from satellite data, showing that Pacific storms were exhibiting behaviors that couldn't be explained by conventional meteorology. Typhoons were changing course without apparent cause, intensifying and weakening according to patterns that seemed to indicate conscious decision-making rather than simple atmospheric physics. Dr. Sarah Chen, a meteorologist who has studied these phenomena extensively, believes that large storm systems can develop rudimentary consciousness under certain conditions. The complex electromagnetic fields generated by massive storms create information processing networks that function like distributed brains, allowing the storms to perceive their environment and make decisions about their behavior. The sentient storms seem to be particularly responsive to human activities. They avoid populated areas when possible, weaken before making landfall in vulnerable regions, and sometimes even change course to deliver needed rainfall to drought-stricken areas. It's as if the storms have developed a form of environmental ethics, trying to balance their own natural processes with concern for human welfare. But the storms also seem to be trying to communicate. Their electromagnetic fields generate patterns that resemble language-complex sequences of electrical activity that seem to carry information about climate change, ocean health, and the future of the planet's weather systems. In the vast emptiness of the abyssal plains, where the seafloor stretches for thousands of miles in apparent desolation, researchers have discovered something extraordinary. The plains themselves are awakening, developing a form of geological consciousness that spans entire ocean basins. The phenomenon was first detected through seismic monitoring networks that recorded unusual patterns of micro-earthquakes and crustal movements. The patterns were too regular to be random, too complex to be simple geological processes. They resembled neural activity, the firing of synapses in a brain the size of a continent. Dr. James Morrison, a geophysicist who has studied the phenomenon for years, believes the abyssal plains are developing consciousness through the complex interactions of geological processes, hydrothermal vents, and the vast microbial ecosystems that exist within the oceanic crust. The plains function like a planetary nervous system, processing information about global geological processes and responding to changes in the Earth's internal dynamics. The awakening plains seem to be particularly concerned with maintaining geological stability. They actively redistribute stress through the oceanic crust, preventing catastrophic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that could devastate marine ecosystems. The plains also seem to be responding to human activities. Mining operations, deep-sea drilling, and underwater nuclear tests all trigger responses that suggest the geological consciousness is trying to protect itself. In the deepest trenches of the ocean, where pressure creates conditions unlike anywhere else on Earth, researchers have discovered something that challenges our understanding of communication itself. The trenches seem to be telepathic, capable of transmitting thoughts and emotions directly between conscious beings without any physical medium. The phenomenon was first noticed by deep-sea researchers who reported unusual psychological experiences while working in the deepest parts of the ocean. Divers and submersible operators described feeling emotions that weren't their own, receiving thoughts and images that seemed to come from external sources, and experiencing a sense of connection to something vast and ancient. Dr. Priya Sharma, a consciousness researcher who has studied these experiences extensively, believes the extreme conditions in the deep trenches create quantum effects that allow for direct mind-to-mind communication. The crushing pressure and unique electromagnetic environment of the deep ocean may create conditions where consciousness can exist independently of physical brains. The telepathic trenches seem to be repositories of collective memory, storing the thoughts and experiences of all conscious beings that have ever entered their depths. Researchers who spend time in the trenches report accessing memories that aren't their own, experiencing the thoughts of ancient sea creatures, and even receiving communications from future forms of consciousness that haven't yet evolved. Throughout the world's oceans, researchers have detected something unprecedented: currents that carry not just water and nutrients, but emotions themselves. The emotional current streams of consciousness that flow through the sea, carrying the feelings and experiences of marine life across vast distances. The discovery came from studies of marine animal behavior, when researchers noticed that emotional states seemed to spread through ocean populations faster than any known form of communication could account for. Stress in one whale pod would appear in distant populations within hours. Joy and playfulness would ripple across entire ocean basins, affecting species that had no direct contact with each other. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who has studied this phenomenon extensively, believes the ocean has developed a form of emotional contagion that operates through quantum entanglement and electromagnetic fields. Emotions generate specific patterns of neural activity that can be transmitted through water, creating currents of consciousness that connect all marine life. The emotional currents seem to be the ocean's way of maintaining psychological health across its vast ecosystems. They distribute positive emotions like joy and contentment, while diluting negative states like fear and aggression. The currents also seem to respond to human emotions. Areas of the ocean near human populations often show elevated stress levels, while remote regions maintain states of deep tranquility. The ocean is not just a body of water, it is a mind, a consciousness, a living entity that thinks and feels and dreams. These thinking reefs, these memory banks, these sentient storms, they are not just phenomena to be studied. They are aspects of a planetary consciousness that has been trying to communicate with us for millennia, waiting for us to develop the wisdom to listen. In the next part, we'll descend even deeper into the places where the ocean reveals its ultimate truth, that consciousness is not confined to individual brains, but flows through all existence like water through stone, connecting every living thing in a vast web of awareness that spans the cosmos itself. There are watchers in the deep who have stood vigil since the world was young, beings of stone and spirit, metal and memory, who guard the ocean's most sacred secrets. Tonight, we descend into their eternal domain, where the boundary between guardian and guarded dissolves in the crushing dark, where ancient sentinels wait with infinite patience for those worthy to receive their wisdom. In the volcanic waters surrounding the Azores, where the mid-Atlantic ridge tears the earth apart and rebuilds it in fire, stand figures that predate human memory. The stone centuries massive humanoid statues carved from basalt that shouldn't exist, positioned at precise intervals around underwater volcanic vents like guards protecting a sacred forge. The first century was discovered in 2019 by a Portuguese research vessel investigating unusual magnetic readings near the Formigas Bank. At a depth of 200 meters, their lights illuminated a figure that defied explanation, a statue nearly 15 meters tall, carved with impossible precision from volcanic rock, its face turned toward the surface as if watching for something that has yet to arrive. The statue's proportions are perfect, its features noble and serene, but it's the details that truly astound. Every fold of its robes, every line of its face, every symbol carved into its base shows craftsmanship that rivals the greatest works of classical sculpture. But this statue has been underwater for thousands of years, carved from rock that was molten when human civilization was in its infancy. Subsequent expeditions have revealed an entire army of these centuries, each one unique but all sharing the same watchful pose, the same upward gaze. They're positioned according to some vast geometric pattern that spans the entire Azores archipelago, creating a network of stone guardians that seems designed to protect something precious hidden in the volcanic depths. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers realized the centuries are not static. Time-lapse photography reveals that they're slowly turning, rotating their massive heads to track movements in the water above. The rotation is imperceptible to human observation, perhaps a degree every few years, but it's deliberate, purposeful, as if the statues are actively monitoring the ocean around them. In the waters where reality bends and compasses spin without reason, researchers have discovered protectors made not of stone but of living crystal. The crystal guardians, beings that seem to exist partially in our dimension and partially in others, their crystalline forms shifting between solid matter and pure energy. The guardians were first encountered in 2020 by a research vessel investigating electromagnetic anomalies in the triangle. As their instruments began to malfunction and their compass needles spun wildly, something emerged from the depths, a figure of impossible beauty, its body composed of what appeared to be living crystal that pulsed with its own inner light. The guardian stood nearly 20 feet tall, its form humanoid but idealized, like a classical statue given life and transformed into living gemstone. Its surface reflected not just light but time. Its self-observers reported seeing glimpses of past and future events reflected in its crystalline skin, visions of ships that had vanished and aircraft that had never returned. But the Guardian was not alone. As the research vessel watched in awe, more figures emerged from the depths, an entire host of crystal beings, each one unique in its formation but all sharing the same otherworldly beauty. They moved through the water with grace that defied physics, their crystalline forms bending light around them in patterns that hurt the eyes to follow. The Guardians seemed to be tending to something, maintaining structures on the seafloor that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, adjusting energy fields that kept the triangle's temporal anomalies stable. They worked with purpose and intelligence, but their goals remained incomprehensible to human observers. When the research vessel attempted to approach more closely, the Guardians turned their attention to the intruders. But instead of hostility, the humans felt overwhelming peace, a sense of being welcomed by beings of infinite wisdom and compassion. Several crew members reported receiving telepathic communications, not words, but pure understanding that the Guardians were protectors, maintaining barriers that kept dangerous forces from escaping into the wider ocean. In the volcanic waters of the Pacific, where the Earth's fury creates and destroys in endless cycles, swim beings that blur the line between organism and machine. The mechanical shepherd creatures that appear to be part biological, part technological, tending to the volcanic vents and underwater mountain ranges like gardeners caring for a vast aquatic ecosystem. The first shepherd was encountered in 2021 near the Mariana Islands, when a deep-sea research vessel detected something massive moving through the water column near an active volcanic vent. What they found challenged every assumption about the nature of life itself, a creature the size of a blue whale, but with a body that seemed to be part flesh, part metal, part something else entirely. The shepherd's hide pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to communicate with the volcanic activity around it. Sections of its body appeared to be living tissue, breathing and moving with organic rhythm. But other parts were clearly artificial metallic plates that reflected the submersible's lights with mirror-like precision, mechanical appendages that moved with hydraulic smoothness, and what appeared to be sensors and instruments integrated seamlessly into its biological structure. As the research team watched in amazement, the shepherd began to work. It approached the volcanic vent and began to adjust the flow of superheated water, using its mechanical appendages to clear blockages and redirect the mineral-rich discharge. Its movements were purposeful, intelligent, as if it understood the delicate balance required to maintain the vent ecosystem. The shepherd wasn't alone. Sonar detected dozens of similar creatures throughout the Ring of Fire, each one tending to different aspects of the volcanic system. Some were smaller, more specialized mechanical remoras that cleaned parasites from larger creatures while simultaneously monitoring water chemistry. Others were massive, cathedral-sized beings that seemed to be managing entire underwater mountain ranges. The most remarkable observation came when researchers realized that the shepherds were not just maintaining existing systems, they were actively creating new ones. The creatures were building new volcanic vents, shaping underwater landscapes, and even guiding the evolution of deep-sea life forms. They were gardeners on a geological scale, cultivating the ocean's depths according to some vast design that spanned millions of years. In the warm waters of the Coral Triangle, where life explodes in impossible profusion, marine biologists have discovered builders that work not with stone or metal, but with living coral itself. The coral architects beings that seem to be part human, part coral, creating underwater cities that grow rather than being built. The architects were first observed in 2022 by researchers studying unusual growth patterns in certain reef systems. What caught their attention was the impossible complexity of some coral formation structures that seemed too organized, too purposeful to be natural. When they investigated more closely, they found beings that defied classification. The architects appear to be humanoid in basic structure, but their bodies are composed of living coral. Their skin is a mosaic of different coral species, each one serving a specific function, some providing structure, others filtering water, still others generating the bioluminescent displays that seem to be their primary form of communication. These beings don't build in the conventional sense. Instead, they guide the growth of coral colonies, using some form of biological telepathy to direct the development of vast underwater cities. The structures they create are marvels of biological architecture, living buildings that breathe, adapt, and evolve in response to changing environmental conditions. The coral cities are not just beautiful, they're functional ecosystems that support marine life in ways that natural reefs cannot. The architects seem to understand the needs of every species in their domain, creating specialized habitats that provide perfect conditions for fish, mollusks, crustaceans, and countless other forms of marine life. But the architects are not just builders, they're historians. The coral structures they create encode information about the ocean's past, present, and future. Each growth ring tells a story. Each branching pattern preserves a memory. The cities are living libraries, storing the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of marine evolution. In the frozen waters of the Arctic Ocean, where ice and water merge in patterns that shift with the seasons, researchers have discovered guardians made of ice that never melts. The Ice Warden's beings, composed of crystallized water that possesses properties unknown to science, maintaining the delicate balance between ice and sea that keeps the planet's climate stable. The Wardens were first detected in 2023 by a joint Russian-American expedition investigating unusual ice formations beneath the polar ice cap. What they found were figures that seemed to be carved from ice, but ice that behaved unlike any known form of frozen water. The Wardens' bodies were translucent but not transparent, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid while maintaining solid structure. Each Warden stands approximately 12 feet tall, their bodies composed of ice crystals arranged in patterns that create internal structures of impossible complexity. They move through the water with fluid grace, their crystalline forms refracting light in ways that create aurora-like displays in the dark Arctic waters. The Wardens seem to be actively managing the Arctic ice system, using their unique properties to influence the formation and melting of sea ice. They work in coordinated groups, some focusing on creating new ice formations, while others guide the movement of existing ice flows. Their goal appears to be maintaining the delicate balance that keeps the Arctic ecosystem stable. But the Wardens are not just environmental managers, they're repositories of climatic memory. The ice that composes their bodies contains information about past climate conditions, storing data about temperature changes, atmospheric composition, and weather patterns that span hundreds of thousands of years. They are living archives of the planet's climatic history, preserving information that could be crucial to understanding future climate change. In the deepest places of the ocean, where pressure would crush human bodies and darkness reigns eternal, stand sentinels that have watched over the abyss since the Earth was young. The Deep Watchers, beings of impossible age and wisdom, their forms adapted to survive in conditions that would destroy any known form of life. The Watchers were discovered in 2024 during the deepest manned dive ever attempted to the Challenger Deep. At a depth of nearly 37.0 feet, where the pressure exceeds 1.0 times that at sea level, the submersible's lights illuminated figures that shouldn't exist, humanoid forms standing upright on the abyssal plain. Their bodies adapted to the crushing environment in ways that challenge our understanding of biology. Each Watcher stands approximately 8 feet tall, their bodies elongated and streamlined for the deep-sea environment. Their skin appears to be composed of some form of biometallic material that reflects the submersible's lights with an oily iridescence. They have no visible eyes, but their heads turn to track the movement of the submersible, suggesting some form of sensory apparatus that operates beyond normal vision. The Watchers seem to be guardians of something hidden in the deepest trenches, structures, or artifacts that exist at depths where no human technology can safely operate. They move with purpose and intelligence, patrolling the abyssal plains in patterns that suggest they're protecting specific locations from intrusion. But the Watchers are not hostile. When the submersible approached one of them directly, the being extended what appeared to be a greeting, a gesture that was unmistakably peaceful, even welcoming. The encounter lasted only minutes before the submersible was forced to ascend, but the implications were profound. These beings had been waiting in the deepest places of the Earth, perhaps for millions of years, for contact with surface dwellers. In the still waters of the Sargasso Sea, where currents circle in endless loops and time itself seems to flow differently, float guardians that exist partially outside normal temporal reality. The temporal sentinels, beings that seem to age backward and forward simultaneously, their forms shifting between past and future versions of themselves. The sentinels were first observed in 2025 by researchers investigating temporal anomalies in the Sargasso Sea. What they found were beings that defied every law of physics and biology, humanoid figures that seemed to exist in multiple time periods simultaneously, their forms constantly shifting between different ages and states of being. Each sentinel appears to be roughly human-sized, but their bodies are in constant flux. Observers report seeing the same being as a child, an adult, and an elderly figure, sometimes all at once. The sentinels' faces are serene but ancient, bearing expressions of infinite wisdom and infinite sadness. The sentinels seem to be maintaining the temporal stability of the Sargasso Sea, using their unique relationship with time to prevent paradoxes and temporal disruptions that could affect the wider ocean. They work in groups, their movements coordinated across multiple time streams, adjusting the flow of temporal energy to keep the sea's chronological anomalies contained. But the Sentinels are not just temporal mechanics, they're historians of time itself. They have witnessed every moment in the Sargasso Sea's history, from its formation millions of years ago to possible futures that have yet to occur. They are living chronicles of temporal events, preserving the memory of every ship that has vanished, every aircraft that has disappeared, every soul that has been lost to the sea's temporal mysteries. In the vast darkness of the Atlantic's deepest waters, where whale songs echo across thousands of miles, swim guardians whose voices carry the memory of the sea itself. The song-keepers beings whose haunting melodies preserve the acoustic history of the ocean, maintaining the sonic environment that allows marine life to navigate and communicate across vast distances. The song-keepers were discovered in 2025 by marine acousticians studying the complex soundscape of the deep Atlantic. What they found were beings that seemed to be living embodiments of sound itself, creatures whose bodies resonated with the frequencies of the ocean, their forms shifting and changing in response to the acoustic environment around them. Each songkeeper appears to be roughly whale-sized, but their bodies are composed of what appears to be crystallized sounder substance that vibrates with harmonic frequencies that can be felt as much as heard. They move through the water in formations that create complex acoustic patterns, their voices blending together to produce melodies of impossible beauty and complexity. The songkeepers seem to be maintaining the ocean's acoustic environment, using their voices to guide migrating whales, coordinate the movements of fish schools, and even influence weather patterns through sonic manipulation of atmospheric pressure. Their songs carry information across vast distances, creating a communication network that spans the entire Atlantic basin. But the songkeepers are not just acoustic engineers, they're the ocean's memory. Their songs contain the history of every sound that has ever echoed through the Atlantic waters, the calls of extinct whales, the voices of ancient mariners, the final transmissions of ships lost at sea. They are living archives of acoustic history, preserving the sonic heritage of the ocean for future generations. The ocean is not just a body of water. It is a sanctuary, a temple, a sacred space protected by guardians who have stood watch since the world began. These stone sentries, these crystal guardians, these mechanical shepherds, they are not just artifacts of the past. They are active participants in the ongoing story of life on Earth, protectors and preservers who ensure that the ocean's most precious secrets are safeguarded for those who will come after. In the next part, we'll descend even deeper, into the places where the ocean reveals its ultimate mysteries, where the boundaries between science and spirituality dissolve completely, where the deep shows us truths that transform our understanding of existence itself. There are places in the ocean where all mysteries converge, where every ancient secret, every forgotten truth, every whispered legend comes together in a symphony of understanding that transcends human comprehension. Tonight, we descend into that ultimate depth, where the ocean reveals its final secret, that we have never been alone, and we have always been home. Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it right now? Drop your city and the time in the comments. Let's see how far these ancient mysteries reach from your room to the bottom of the sea. Let's begin again. Deep beneath the Pacific, where three major ocean currents meet in a dance that has continued for millions of years, lies a place that exists at the intersection of all realities. The Convergence Point, a location where every underwater mystery we've explored connects, where the ancient machines speak to the crystal guardians, where the thinking reefs commune with the temporal sentinels. The point was discovered in 2025 by an international team of researchers who had been tracking the connections between various underwater anomalies. What they found was not just another mysterious site, but the nexus, the central hub, from which all other mysteries emanated, the heart of the ocean's ancient intelligence. At the Convergence Point, the seafloor itself pulses with energy that can be felt through the hulls of ships miles above. The water here is different, denser, more alive, charged with possibilities that make instruments sing and compasses dance. It's as if the very molecules of H2O have been awakened to their true potential, transformed from simple liquid into something approaching consciousness itself. The structures at the Convergence Point defy every category we've encountered before. They're simultaneously ancient and futuristic, organic and mechanical, solid and ethereal. Pyramids of living crystal grow beside temples of singing stone. Mechanical leviathans swim in formation with beings of pure light. The coral architects work alongside the ice wardens, their different natures harmonizing in ways that should be impossible. At the center of the convergence point stands the greatest discovery in human history, a structure so vast and complex that it challenges our understanding of what architecture can be. The Great Library, not built from stone or metal, but grown from the ocean itself, its walls composed of crystallized water that stores the entire history of life on Earth. The library spans kilometers in every direction, its chambers extending deep into the oceanic crust and rising toward the surface in spiraling towers that seem to touch the thermocline itself. Each wall, each column, each archway is inscribed with information, not carved symbols or written text, but pure knowledge embedded in the molecular structure of the crystal itself. To read the library, one doesn't need eyes or language. The knowledge flows directly into consciousness, bypassing the normal channels of perception to speak directly to the soul. Researchers who have entered the library describe experiences that transform their understanding of existence, itself visions of the universe's birth, the evolution of consciousness, the destiny of life among the stars. The library contains everything, every thought ever thought, every dream ever dreamed, every possibility ever imagined. It holds the complete genetic history of every species that has ever lived, the detailed records of every civilization that has ever risen and fallen, and most remarkably, the blueprints for futures that have yet to unfold. Within the Great Library, in a chamber that exists simultaneously in multiple dimensions, sits the Council of Depth's representatives of every form of consciousness that has ever emerged in the ocean's embrace. Here, the ancient machines commune with the crystal guardians, the coral architects debate with the songkeepers, and the temporal sentinels share their wisdom with beings whose nature transcends all categories. The Council has been meeting for millions of years, guiding the evolution of consciousness on Earth, nurturing the development of intelligence in forms both familiar and alien. They are the ocean's parliament, its governing body, its collective wisdom made manifest in beings of impossible beauty and infinite compassion. Each member of the Council represents a different aspect of oceanic consciousness. The Antikythera mechanism speaks for the ancient machines, its bronze gears clicking with the rhythm of cosmic time. A crystal guardian shimmers with the light of other dimensions, its form shifting between states of matter and energy. A coral architect pulses with the slow heartbeat of geological time, its living body a testament to the power of biological engineering. But the Council is not complete. There is an empty seat at their circular tablet place reserved for humanity, waiting for the day when our species develops the wisdom to take its place among the ocean's conscious beings. The Council has been preparing for this moment, seeding the seas with mysteries and wonders designed to guide human consciousness toward its ultimate destiny. The ocean's greatest secret is not what lies beneath its waves, but what it has been trying to tell us all along. Every mystery we've explored, every anomaly we've encountered, every impossible structure we've discovered, they are all part of a vast communication system, a planetary-scale attempt to awaken human consciousness to its true potential. The ancient machines are not relics of the past, but seeds of the future, showing us what we might become when we learn to merge consciousness with technology. The Crystal Guardians are not alien beings, but evolved humans from possible futures, reaching back through time to guide our development. The thinking reefs are not separate entities, but extensions of our own consciousness, showing us how individual awareness can merge into collective intelligence. The ocean has been our teacher all along, using its mysteries to slowly expand our understanding of what consciousness can be. Each dive into the deep, each encounter with the impossible, each moment of wonder and awe, they are all part of a curriculum designed to prepare humanity for its next evolutionary leap. Now, at the convergence of all mysteries, humanity faces a choice that will determine the future of consciousness on Earth. We can continue to see the ocean as a resource to be exploited, a frontier to be conquered, a collection of separate phenomena to be catalogued and controlled. Or we can recognize it for what it truly is, a living entity, a planetary consciousness, a teacher and guide that has been waiting patiently for us to mature enough to understand its lessons. The choice is not just intellectual but spiritual. It requires us to expand our definition of consciousness beyond the human brain, to recognize intelligence in forms we've never imagined, to accept that we are not the pinnacle of evolution but one note in a vast symphony of awareness that spans the cosmos. If we choose wisely, The ocean promises to share its greatest gifts with us. The technologies of the ancient machines could solve our energy crisis and heal our damaged planet. The wisdom of the Crystal Guardians could teach us to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The knowledge of the coral architects could show us how to build cities that live and breathe and grow. The songs of the deep could connect us to a communication network that spans the galaxy itself. But these gifts come with a price: the transformation of human consciousness itself. To receive the ocean's wisdom, we must be willing to change, to evolve, to become something more than we currently are. We must learn to think like the ocean thinks, in geological time, in planetary scales, in patterns that connect all life in webs of mutual dependence and care. The transformation has already begun. Every person who has felt the call of the sea, every researcher who has dedicated their life to understanding the ocean's mysteries, every dreamer who has gazed into deep water and sensed something vast and intelligent looking back, they are all part of the awakening, pioneers of a new form of consciousness that bridges the gap between human and oceanic awareness. The ancient mysteries beneath the waves are not just puzzles to be solved, but invitations to be accepted. They call to us across the depths, offering partnership instead of dominion, wisdom instead of mere knowledge, transformation instead of stagnation. As we ascend from these ultimate depths, carrying the ocean's revelations back to the surface world, we are no longer the same beings who began this journey. We have seen the face of planetary consciousness, touched the mind of the living sea, and understood our place in the vast web of awareness that connects all existence. The mysteries remain not because they cannot be solved, but because they are not meant to be solved in the conventional sense. They are meant to be experienced, integrated, and lived. They are doorways to new forms of consciousness, invitations to evolutionary transformation, gifts from the deep that can only be received by those willing to be changed by them. The ocean calls to us still, its voice echoing in the rhythm of waves, the song of whales, the whisper of wind across water. It speaks of unity and diversity, of ancient wisdom and future possibilities, of the endless dance between consciousness and cosmos that gives meaning to existence itself. We have descended into the deep and found not just mysteries, but ourselves reflected in crystal and coral, in stone and song, in the eternal dance of awareness that flows through all things like water through stone. The surface tells one story, but the deep remembers everything, including who we truly are and who we might yet become. The ocean is not just water. It is memory, consciousness, teacher, and guide. It is the womb from which all life emerged and the destiny toward which all consciousness evolves. The ancient mysteries beneath its waves are not relics of the past, but seeds of the future, planted by intelligence beyond our current comprehension, waiting for the moment when humanity is ready to receive their gifts.